Hello and welcome to TheAIbumMan, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 most disappointing albums of 2014. Well, 2014 has been a really good year for music. There has certainly been a few disappointments. Now in 2013 I decided to do a top 10 worst of 2013 albums, but this year I just found there were more disappointments than out and out really bad albums. Though I am also going to be doing my number one worst rock album that I heard personally in 2014. So let's get that out the way first before we get on to the main event, the top 10 disappointing. So the previous winner of this, back because I haven't done I suppose the previous winner, yeah, my worst rock album for 2013 was Frequency Unknown by Queensryche. That was definitely a deserving loser. Then in 2012, I think it was Rise of the Phoenix by Tenacious D. I really don't like Tenacious D. And 2014, who could it possibly be? Well, it's hardly a surprise. It's not an album we're going to dwell on for long. No Fixed Address by Nickelback. Did anyone really have that good of expectations for this? You may say, well, why did I even bother listening to this? I listened to it just to hate on it, just to have something as a worst rock album. I mean, I had kind of had a feeling it might end up here, I won't lie. But the thing that, with me, certainly, is that Nickelback are very important to me getting into music. All the Right Reasons, when that album came out, when I was younger, was actually my favourite album of all time at one point. Nickelback were, in fact, my favourite band. No joke, they genuinely were. I was a big Nickelback fan. So they still have that sort of special place in my heart, and I still do have a lot of nostalgia, and I do still have a fondness for that early material, for albums like Silver Side Up and All the Right Reasons. I can listen to those albums, and I don't see them as these awful abominations. It's just like, oh, it's pleasant commercial rock. But with No Fixed Address, it just isn't pleasant. There's a collaboration with Flo Rida on here, some rapper I don't know much about, and that was awful. It's got a real pop sound. They've been going downhill since All the Right Reasons. Dark Horse was alright, but it was definitely worse. And Here and Now was just awful. And No Fixed Address, I'd honestly say this is the worst album yet. Somehow Nickelback are actually getting worse, and I don't really know how. On to the top 10 most disappointing albums of 2014 then. At number 10. This is going to be one that could cause a bit of controversy, one you'd probably expect to be in my top 50, and not here. At number 10, Z2 by Devin Townsend Project. Oh, it hurts me here to put this in. I'm really sorry, Devin Townsend. I love seeing you live at Sonosphere. You were great, you really were. Great show. Loved Mixcloud. What an album. I don't like the first Ziltoid, let's get that out of the way. That is my least favourite Devin Townsend album up to this point, was the first Ziltoid. I don't like the concept, I don't like the whole coffee thing, I don't like narration, I just find it silly but not in a funny way. It's just not my sense of humour, the whole Ziltoid thing. It's not, I just find it dumb and uninteresting. The music behind it is pretty cool, yeah, because it's Devin, but the concept I don't. So the second part of this album, with the Ziltoid sequel, I haven't enjoyed so far. And then the first part, Sky Blue, I was surprised. I thought I was going to love that album. I thought, yes, new Devin, going to be like Devin Townsend Project, awesome. And it's really pop metal. Like, I mean, I like it when he does stuff with the female vocalist he uses, and I think that dynamic works really well in his music. I like some of his softer material. But this type of pop metal, almost like Coheed and Cambria type stuff, I mean, I love Coheed and Cambria, but I really just didn't think Devin managed to pull it off yet. I really didn't like the production. I found it way too bombastic. It seemed a bit overcompressed to me. Maybe that's just me listening to it through a streaming service, but in general, it just, the production I thought sounded a bit off. I didn't think the songwriting was anything that special. I didn't think the instrumentation was all that good, and it just sounded like sort of by the numbers, but yeah, really kind of poppy. Devin Townsend. The reason it's number 10, because this definitely could have been higher on the list, is that I haven't spent enough time with it. I really need to listen to the album more, and maybe I'll become a customer, and maybe I'll fall in love with it. I really hope so. But at the moment, it's a disappointment. At number 9, how the hell did this end up on the list? This is weird. This is the only album. This is very weird. This ended up on both my top 50 and my top 10 disappointing. How that happens, I'm not sure, because the thing is, it's a good album. It's just I expect so much more from this band, because they're so brilliant. At number 9, Kaleidoscope by Transatlantic. What disappointed me about this, Transatlantic, one of the best prog supergroups out there, the modern day Emerson, Lake and Palmer, big epics. Their last time Whirlwind was like a 77-minute piece. What didn't I like about Transatlantic? Well, I didn't dislike Kaleidoscope, of course. It's in my top 50 still. I still thought it was a good album. But it was just basically their first album, SMPT, which in my opinion is their best album. It was basically just a rehash of that album. They really didn't bring anything new to the table, I felt, with Kaleidoscope. The song structures are pretty much the same as the first album. The song lengths were the bloody same. The track or the sequencing, it was so deja vu. I found it bizarre. It's not an album I've really listened to since I reviewed it and it came out, which is weird because I really, really like Transatlantic. So for that reason, disappointed. Yeah, it's still a good album. It's still an album I have enjoyed in the year, but definitely a disappointment. At number 8, an album that I didn't have a massive amount of expectation for, but it was still a pretty not great album. Men of Honor by Adrenaline Mob. Now, I was a defender of Omerta when that album came out in 2012. Mike Portnoy's supergroup with the guy from Symphony X, Russell something, from Symphony X on vocals, and someone else, I can't remember. They were the two main people. And I thought it was a decent album. Okay, yes, it was very commercial rock. It didn't do anything that interesting. It was pretty mainstream. It had a really good cover of a Duran Duran song, which featured Lizzie Hale, though, and that was really kind of cool. But then Mike Portnoy left, and it was like, oh god, where are Adrenaline Mob going to go from here? And it turns out downhill. Just even more downhill than people said they'd already gone downhill with the first album. This is just some of the most mediocre, boring and dull music really you're going to hear from someone as talented as Russell from Symphony X on vocals. It's really a shame why they've gone for this sort of Disturbed-esque type of sound, I would say, and why they feel that they just need to be so unimaginative, why they just don't seem to put any effort. It's just felt so effortless, so by the numbers, and that's why it's disappointing, because I think this band has talent. But maybe not. Number 7, my 2011 Album of the Year winners. Yes, this band's last album won my Album of the Year, and yet here they are at number 7 on my most disappointed list. Oh, how times can change. Blackstone Cherry with Magic Mountain. Magic Mountain wasn't a bad album, no, it definitely wasn't a bad album. It was a good album. It's just that, well, Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea was an exceptional blend of sort of commercial rock with a southern tinge. Got that Leonard Skin type thing. Chris Robinson with his really powerful voice, goodly guitar work, tight songwriting, very catchy, well-performed album. And then we get to Magic Mountain with all of its drug references every 2.5 seconds. Me and Mary Jane got it going on. And all of that, and hey, I don't mind. I listen to loads of stoner music and psychedelic and all that type of stuff, so that doesn't bother me. What does bother me is just the lackluster songwriting. Fiesta del Fuego, the place where the girls go. That song is the worst of their career. It's awful, awful. It takes songs like, I never like Blame It on the Boom Boom that much on Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea. It takes that type of song, that type of, I has to say, almost Nickelback-like song, and really makes a whole album full of that type of stuff. Yes, some of them can be sort of fist-pumping, but in a sort of a watered-down, uncreative way. There was just nothing that really captured me about it. So yes, it does have some good songs. Hollywood in Kentucky, strong song. And I personally did enjoy Me and Mary Jane the single. I defended it when it came out. But from Blackstone Cherry, I really expected a whole lot more. They were great live, and their live set wasn't effective, but compared to Folklore and Superstition and their debut, this really was just disappointing. At number 6, an album which should have been in my top 10, top 15 on paper. I love the Foo Fighters, I really do. But I don't love Sonic Highways. Well, I like Sonic Highways. Again, it's like Magic Mountain, it's a good album. I'd rate them pretty similarly, but for Foo Fighters to deliver something like this, Foo Fighters, the guys who brought us Wasting Light, the incredible garage rock Back to Roots album in 2012. who brought us Colouring Shape and Echo Silence Patience Grace. How Dave Grohl could sing this, like, I mean, conceptually it sounded really interesting. They were going to record a different song in a different studio in a different place from America. Cool. I mean, I was a bit worried that the album might lack coherency as a result of recording in different studios and with different guests, and honestly I think the documentary and the gimmick eclipsed the actual songwriting. I honestly believe Foo Fighters was so focused on making the accompanying HBO documentary Sonic Highways and of just having all these guest stars and everything that they just forgot how to write a good album with Pinch and Dio's Holy Diver riff and Something from Nothing, and just, again, generally very lackluster songs. Again, I would say this is similar to the last two with Magic Mountain and Men of Honor, that Foo Fighters have just gone in a commercial, unimaginative direction. They've just strove to do nothing. In each of their albums, they usually do something a bit different. I'm not saying they're the most innovative band, but they do tend to strive to do something that bit different, that bit more, that bit extra, or that bit interesting and unique. Here, no, this is the worst album they've ever released, and that's why it's number 6. Number 5, another of How the Mighty Have Fallen. I can't say my anticipation was massive for this, but bearing this name, well, it's always going to be existent. Yes is Heaven and Earth. Yes, without John Anderson has not been too wonderful in my book. In fact, Yes hasn't been too wonderful since John Anderson left the first time. I don't like the album with the numbers on it that I can never remember which numbers they are. The really commercial one with Trevor Rabin. No, I didn't like the follow-up. I haven't really liked any Yes album up to that, but I did enjoy Fly From Here a couple of years ago. I think it was 2011 when that came out. And since they've got another John Anderson singer-like, who sings a lot like John Anderson, but isn't John Anderson, doesn't quite sound as good. I really am sick of Yes just trying to replace John Anderson directly and get people who sound a lot like him, and sort of facsimiles, but not great facsimiles. You know, it's like, I would say the equivalent, it's like, you know, John Anderson, he's like a, you know, expensive Gibson Les Paul that you see in a guitar shop, a high-end guitar shop. You see, it's like, wow, that is just beautiful guitar. And then a song like the guy they've got now, it's more like one of those sort of cheap, who the hell are this brand Les Pauls that you see in a pawn shop for 50 quid. And it's like, they may look pretty damn similar on the surface, but dear God, do they play differently. And really, I think that's part of the trouble with Yes. And originally they were meant to do something more ambitious, it was like a 20-minute song or things like that, something a bit proggier here. No, instead they abandoned that due to time constraints, and this album feels rushed. This album feels like it was just shoveled out for the sheer sake of having an album out. Yes, here, just, well, none of the songs are that long, none of them are that intricate or musically diverse, none of them are that compelling or even that catchy, none of them do really anything that well. It's a very average album from a previously exceptional band. At number 4, this one as well, like, directly was I massively stoked for it? No, because I only found out about it the day it released, because it's bloody Tom York with Tomorrow's Modern Boxers. Tom York's not known for giving plenty of time to look forward to his albums. You know, I'm sure the Radiohead album coming out later in 2015 will drop a 5 seconds notice, because that's just how Tom York is. And it was an interesting concept. For £3, pretty much you could buy the album, and it's through BitTorrent, and I did. Bought it as soon as I heard about it. Listened to it day one, listened to it for a few days and reviewed it, and reviewed it pretty well. But anything bearing Tom York's name, since Radiohead, in my top 10 favourite bands of all time, yeah, I'm going to have high expectation. And, well, this didn't deliver, unfortunately, to my high expectation. Now, was I expecting this to be a largely electronica project? Well, yeah, it's Tom York in 2014. That's hardly a surprise after the king of shite. But the thing is, Tom York's last solo album, well, very electronic-y, The Eraser, was fantastic. The Eraser was strong, and songs like Harridan Hill, oh, what a track that was. There were some killer tunes on there. Really tastefully implemented electronica, done very well. Nice and minimalist, with still some acoustic parts, some piano. tom voice, this beautiful, ethereal voice guy in the way. It was lovely. But Tomorrow's Modern Boxers, things sounded a bit more Aphex Twins, things sounded a bit more glitchier and, well, maybe less minimalist in the electronica department. This was an all-out electronica album. I mean, it's been a while since I've listened to it. If memory serves correctly, I don't think there's a single guitar to be found on this album, to be honest. It's just electronica and Tom's voice. And some of the songs where he's actually singing, they're okay. But then you get something like the weirdest how instrumental, I think it's like There's No Ice, or it's something to do with ice. And oh god, that's just one of the worst songs to have ever come from Tom York ever. It's like 7 minutes, and oh, it goes on, and on, and on, and it samples his voice saying the odd word, but has no singing, really dull instrumentation. It's just drag. And that's the problem, is that while there's a couple of good songs, the middle part of this album is generally awful. It's boring, dull, doesn't do anything interesting or innovative in the electronica world. It's just iterative, and Tom York's voice is the only reason, well, that it isn't higher up on the list. If we're doing rock family trees, and number 5's Heaven and Earth, yes, would definitely relate to number 3 quite closely. And this album, well, in fact, in some ways it has quite a bit in common with Heaven and Earth, yes. You see, Asia's Gravitas was their first album without Steve Howe, the Yes guitarist, and of course founding member of the supergroup Asia, the phenomenally selling group, whose debut album was just massive, particularly in the States. Worldwide, phenomenal, that album. And I honestly think Asia recently, with Howe, have been doing great. XXX was one of my favourite albums of 2012. It was stunning. End to end, some of the best melodic rock, best AOR I've had in years and freaking years outside of Magnum. Genius album. But then they get some new guy in who's a bit younger and looks way out of place. I saw the band live and he looks better out of place. So he's a decent guitarist, you know, he's alright, but I don't really think he fits the band. And I felt that on Asia's Gravitas. This felt like a disconnected affair, featuring one of their worst songs ever called Joe DiMaggio's Glove. And yeah, just that title alone tells you, Joe DiMaggio's Glove. Why the hell would you write a song with the lyric of like Joe DiMaggio's glove? Okay, Joe DiMaggio, yeah, great baseball player, but why are you talking about his glove in an Asia song? What are you on about, John Wetton? What in damn's name are you on about, Joe DiMaggio's glove? And, you know, even looking past that song, which I find it difficult to look past because it transcends abhorrent, it's still a weak, bloody album, watered down Asia to the extreme. Not one good track present. There's not many bad tracks on it, just not one bloody good track. Valkyrie, the single even, is just piss poor 80s reject AOR. This is the type of stuff that, if it was released in the 80s, would be well and truly forgotten about. A band condemned to history that no one would ever touch. Luckily, the 80s period was phenomenal, but I think Gravitas will be an album that, when people look back in 20 years at Asia, people will say, Gravitas? They released that? When? I've never heard of that album, and I hope so, because it was a disappointment. Though great band live, definitely recommend seeing them live. Good band live. And number 2. This, I think a few people would disagree with this, particularly with it being this high on the list. But when you have this, when you bear one of rock music's greatest in the history, one of rock music's most influential names, the anticipation is sky high. And when you fail to deliver anything that isn't exceptional, then it's always going to be easy to look harshly upon it. I'm sorry. Endless River by Pink Floyd. This saddens me to put this here. The thing is, it's not because I dislike this album, and I wouldn't say maybe I have as much vitriol towards this album as I did towards Gravitas or Heaven and Earth or maybe even Sonic Highways. The reason it's this high is because it bears the name Pink Floyd, and from Pink Floyd I expect nothing but the absolute creme de la creme of music. And this wasn't that. This was just a fairly average, a little bit above average. I think we get this like a 6 out of 10. It was it was a very pleasant, meandering listen of Pink Floyd, lush instrumentals. Yes, the production was nice and lush, and the last song with its lyricism by Polly Samson was, yeah, you know, it was a bit emotive to hear Pink Floyd for the last time, to hear Rick Wright, you know. I agree, but really boiled down to it, this is an album that doesn't deserve to be put anywhere near the upper bracket of Pink Floyd albums. And you could say, well, this is, you know, they've done instrumentals like this before and things. Yeah, I've had some people use that argument against my view. It's like, oh, this isn't the first time Pink Floyd have done it. Okay, yeah, I know it isn't the first time. I'm not, and people say, oh, well, you know, you can't expect Dark Side of the Moon. I'm not expecting Dark Side of the Moon from everything. The joy of Pink Floyd was that their album sounded different. Metal's different to Dark Side. I wish you were here different to Metal and Dark Side. The Wall bloody different to all of them, and Animal was somewhere else. That was the genius of Pink Floyd, was that each album was different and unique, but yet genius. Well, you have the earlier period, Piper at the Gates of Dawn. You have even freaking A Saucer Full of Secrets, which is a really, no, sorry, Saucer Full is alright, but actually I'm not a big fan of Saucer Full. Sorry, soundtrack to the film More I was thinking of, which is one of the albums that freaking invented metal. Pink Floyd was so capable of doing diverse interests and stuff, and yes, I know that albums were different, and this was a different album that I didn't think worked. I didn't like The Division, but I didn't like Momentary Lights of Reason. So an album recording the same sessions as the tedious Division Bell, this all instrumental, oh great. My expectations weren't actually that high for it, weirdly enough, considering how it is, but just because of the name, there was that part of me that was always expecting a 9 or a 10. So maybe I'm being overly harsh, maybe I'm being overly critical, but when you carry the name Pink Floyd, and when you've released some of the greatest music I've ever heard in my life, and when you have 4 albums in my top 100 of all time, in fact all 4 of them in my top 50, then I expect only the best. Now, without a doubt, my number 1. This is my most controversial review of 2014, without a doubt. I got a lot of hate, a lot of stick for this review. A lot of people crawled out the woodwork to really hate on me for this. So many nasty people in this fan base. It's like, I'm not generalising, you know, I'm sure there are loads of nice people who into this artist, but dear God, did some people get pissed at my opinion because I gave it a 4.5 out of 10 and thought it was bloody disappointing. Definitely the most disappointing 2014. Man on the Rocks by Mike Oldfield. This is one of those that's critically panned, but a lot of fans seem to enjoy it. This album. Oh, where to even start with the weaknesses of Man on the Rocks? Okay, well, it's Mike Oldfield's first album in a long time. Mike Oldfield, known for his genius instrumentals, Tubular Bells, which I reviewed around Halloween because, you know, the Exorcist time and all that. Albums like Omadorn, Hedges Reach, great albums. I even like some of his ones of vocals, you know, some of his more commercial ones. 5 Miles Out, decent album. This was definitely going for more like 5 Miles Out sound, without a doubt, since they got a vocalist from the band, I can't remember the name of the band, to be honest. I got some vocals, I think it was called Luke something. Can't remember that. It was earlier, it was like in March this album came out, so I haven't listened to it since. Well, I listened to it once since, and certainly didn't change my mind. Now, why is this album so disappointing? Because for Mike Oldfield, the types of things I expect are complex instrumentation, I expect interesting music, well performed, a lot of musicianship. Mike Oldfield's one of the great multi-instrumentalists in the history of rock music, in my opinion. Now I could say, well, you know, what's wrong with him doing something a bit different? No, that's cool. And I was looking forward to the fact, okay, he's doing that with vocals. Didn't see that coming. This is going to be interesting. Where's he going to go from here? What I didn't expect him to do was to sacrifice everything that made him so great and trade it in for, well, vocal melodies with no punch, with nothing about them, for mellow songs that didn't go anywhere, ever, that meandered along so slowly that a snail would sprint ahead faster than Usain Bolt in front of them. Mike Oldfield made some of the dullest, most boring music I heard all year. The only reason I didn't give it lower was, I don't know, in hindsight, maybe even could have given it lower, maybe a 4 out of 10. I did not enjoy that album. Yes, it had the odd hook that was okay. The instrumentation was so dull. I mean, it felt like Well, it's called Man on the Rocks, and clearly has an island theme to it, and yeah, it felt like he was chilling in an island without a care in the world and not bothering to try, not bothering to put the slightest little bit of effort into his first release on Virgin Records for a long time, teaming up with Richard Branson once again. I don't know, maybe this album was just to spite Richard Branson, how he's done that in the past when he named one of his albums Michael Oldfield. I expect a lot from Mike Oldfield because I really admire him hugely as an artist. And here, he took a wrong turn. He took a turn for the worse. This is like Clapton's old sock from 2013 of stuff that does nothing ever and that will just never achieve anything. This will never be remembered among Oldfield's great albums, and I bloody hope it isn't. Disappointment, disappointment. And hey, that's what this list is about. This has been TheAIbumMan. Thanks for watching my top 10 album. Well, top 10. I told you my most disappointing albums of 2014. My top 50 will be to come in the next few days. Hope you enjoy. Comment, rate, subscribe, and as usual, long live rock and roll.